Top 7 Most Powerful Ancient Siege Weapons. Number 1. Circumvallation. There were huge wooden or stone walls around ancient cities, so those inside could control who entered and left them tightly. When the walls proved too difficult to overcome, the city's only option was to cut off from the outside world, which served as the bulk of defense against attacking forces. While circumvallation wasn't always done by creating a circle of troops around it, it was a more permanent method. A wall is built by an attacking force around a city it is trying to conquer. It has a number of advantages. First, it prevents supplies from reaching the city. Secondly, it provided protection for the attacking troops against any defensive weaponry used by those inside the city, allowing them to enter the city and prevent evasions. The line of circumlocution, which could also have been a series of trenches or encampments. Number 2. Ballista. A design for the ballista was delivered from earlier Greek projectile weapons used by the Greeks and the Romans around 400 BC. The ballista had two levers that were connected with torsion springs made from twisted rope and used by both the Greeks and the Romans. They were basically used as a crossbow, and a projectile would be placed in a piece of rope connecting their ends and pulled back along a track. Once the springs were released, the projectile would be pushed up the track and launched toward the target. Almost any projectile could be used with a ballista, although the most commonly used type was a long spear, which caused carnage when it struck enemy fortifications or troops. Upon acquiring the technology from the Greeks, the Romans made a number of improvements such as the introduction of wenches to make it more user-friendly. The listers were apparently so precise in their aim that experienced operators could pick off specific enemy fighters with a projectile. The further away a projectile was launched, the less accurate it would become. Number 3. Scorpion bombs. When battles occur in remote regions, troops are often forced to use whatever local supplies they can get their hands on. Islamic State began making deadly scorpion projectiles in 2014, and they used the principle to great effect. But it turns out, it was far from the first time that this had been done, almost 2,000 years ago, during the siege of the desert city of Hara, about 50 miles southwest of Mosul. In order to repel the Roman army, the residents used every means they had available to them. It was not just scorpions that they used, and you never knew what would emerge from one of those bombs. They filled earthen pots with insects and scorpions, and launched them over the walls so that they cracked open on the ground, cracking open the walls and allowing the invaders to enter. As well as scorpions, Port suggests other poisonous insects such as assassin bugs were included, meaning any Roman soldier unfortunate enough to encounter one was poisoned. Number 4. Battering rams. Usually, the defensive walls and doors of cities were so large and thick that they were almost impenetrable that attacking forces had to use some heavy equipment of their own to break through them. A battering ram would usually be used as part of this, rather than the small portable ones used by law enforcement today. Siege battering rams in ancient times were large and powerful devices made of large rectangular frames on wheels. The actual battering ram was suspended from the structure by ropes or chains that allowed it to be swung back and forth to build up momentum. The entire machine would then be pushed as close to a wall or door as possible when the area was clear. As opposed to the earlier rams, which were simply large logs, operators delivered repeated blows against the target. The heads were made of hardened materials such as iron or bone, and later designs covered them in fireproof material. When fused properly, they could break through virtually any obstacle as they were capable of delivering such a large amount of force in such a small space. As far back as about 900 BC, there are records of the successful deployment of battering rams as siege weapons. Number 5. Caltrops. When a battle takes place, it's a serious advantage for either side to be able to move freely around the battlefield. The caltrop was designed to prevent enemy forces from laying siege on a city and is one of the simplest and most effective siege weapons ever devised. In order for it to stay in place, a series of spikes are pieced together in such a way that one spike is always facing up, while the others form a stable foundation against the ground. In particular, they were effective against mobile troops, such as war elephants, enough damage to stop them from moving. They'd tear through the flesh of a human or animal feed, and if they were deployed properly, they could disable a large amount of troops. Number 6. Flamethrower. A Bayan flamethrower was a deadly device that was used during sea battles, such as the Spartan battles at Lades and Delia. It was the first type of flamethrower to be deployed, and the Boeotians themselves built it specifically for their assault on Dyar during the Peloponnese War to eliminate the city's defensive walls. The main design was fairly straightforward. It was made up of an iron beam that was scooped out, making it hollow, with a bellow at one end where the operator would stand and a cauldron hanging from chains at the other. A small bent pipe led from the end of the beam into the cauldron, and inside the cauldron there would be a lot of lit coals, sulfur, and tar. Using the bellows, air would be forced through and would ignite the cauldron, destroying wooden walls and any soldiers behind them. Number 7. The onager. It was a particularly effective design that was used by the Romans for hundreds of years, and it is often called a catapult. A number of city SGEs were quickly resolved using a rigid frame mounted on wheels. It was first used in 353 AD, and was credited with bringing them to a quick conclusion. There was a bucket at one end of a vertical piece of wood held in place by a bundle of rope that held the projectile. As soon as this was loaded, the arm was forced downward into a horizontal position, and when it was released, the ropes wrapped around it forced it back upright. The Roman military used this to launch their projectile with astonishing accuracy, and it became an indispensable part of their arsenal. That was all for today's video. You can share with us your views in the comments section. And if you are new to the channel, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any future videos we upload. Thank you for watching the video. Best of luck and goodbye.